All right, you guys. So, as I promised, I'm going to bring you another episode of Whiskey Wednesdays. We're out here in the garage because I just felt that it was fitting for today's episode. What I really want to talk about today is buying a new Harley Davidson versus buying an old Harley Davidson. Which one's the best option for you, why to do it, and some of the reasons behind why I always have an older project bike and why I always have a newer daily rider. So I also wanted to talk about a whiskey that I picked up here. This is the Bird Dog, and it is chocolate flavored whiskey. So the last couple episodes I brought you, the whiskeys were $50 and up. Wanted to get something a little bit cheaper on here because I figured this episode is going to talk about pricing of motorcycles as well. So let me open this here. I found this at my local liquor store. It's an 80 proof. I've had Bird Dog before. I've had the peach. The peach was not bad. So I figured I'd give this one a try. Told some guys at work about it, and they all wanted to know what I thought about it. So this one's also got a cork with a wood lid. You can smell the chocolate instantly. So why should you buy a new Harley Davidson over an old Harley Davidson? And on the other hand, why should you buy an old Harley Davidson over a new one? There's reasons for each situation. I decided to buy a newer Harley Davidson because of the reliability. Now, we'll get into that because there's always issues when it comes to reliability. So, number one, reliability of the motorcycle. There's two different camps, there's two different fields of thought, and people argue back and forth on these. One group of people say that the older Harley Davidsons are more reliable as long as you have the right parts for them. A lot of people say the newer Harley Davidsons are more reliable because they're a newer product and there's innovation and new technology going forward. There's pros and cons to both of these. The older motorcycles have a lot more parts. The newer motorcycles sometimes have less parts availability. The older ones, you could find the parts anywhere. You could get online and search for them. Now, that's kind of a convoluted answer because a lot of you guys that have older motorcycles will know that Harley Davidson discontinues a lot of the parts, so you have to go aftermarket. So if you're buying a Harley to keep it all original, that's something that you're going to want to think about. I like the older twin cams. I've had a few of them. Now, when it comes to reliability, the older twin cams can go 40, 50, 60, 70,000 miles with basic maintenance. One of the cons to that platform is that the cam chain tensioner shoes need to be replaced at 40,000 miles. Any Harley dealer will tell you that. Now, switching over to the new models, with reliability, you are sometimes getting an engine that hasn't been road tested as much. With the early M8s, they had a sumping issue. A lot of people are talking about oil consumption. It wasn't as much consumption as it was sumping. You were pulling oil from one side of the engine to the other. So a lot of people were coming in and they were saying that they were noticing oil consumption. It wasn't oil consumption, it was being sumped over to a different area of the engine. That was causing a lot of issues. In 2020, they designed the third revision of the oil pump, fixed all the issues, hence the reason why I waited until 2020 to purchase my motorcycle. With the older bikes, you're gonna have to be knowledgeable. You're going to have skills. You're going to have to know how to turn a wrench. It just comes second nature with Harley Davidson. A lot of the older bikes are classified as being tractor technology. With that being said, you're still going to have to turn some wrenches because the bikes are older. They're going to need basic repairs, just like this one. It's deer season right now in Ohio, so this bike is sitting for a minute. Kind of turn that project off while we're in the midst of hunting. You can definitely smell the chocolate on this. I wanted to give this a shot, especially this time of year with chocolate and fall. Kind of seem to go together. That's really nice. Just like any other flavored whiskey, there's not really a burn to it. There's a strong cocoa aftertaste, so I really was hoping that they did the chocolate well. It's sweet, but it's not overly sweet. It almost tastes like a dark chocolate. There's a real strong cocoa finish on it, but you can taste the whiskey through it. I can definitely taste the whiskey, and you can tell that it was aged properly, and there is a lot of complexity in this whiskey. It's not overly sweet, and that's what I was really hoping for here. I don't like certain flavored whiskeys that are overly sweet, and normally I don't prefer a flavored whiskey, but with this coming in around the $20 mark, I wanted to bring something in that would kind of reflect something that anybody could just walk in and pick up. I was able to find this for $11 at my local liquor store because they were kind of trying to phase this out. I'm glad I picked it up. So with us switching kind of over to price, we already covered reliability. Number 2 is price. A lot of people are hesitant to buy a new Harley Davidson because they're $20,000 to $30,000, sometimes $50,000 if you decide to get a CVO. It's a huge investment, especially in our economy right now where a pickup truck could run you $100,000 and a basic entry-level car is at the $30,000 mark at this point. It's hard to find anything in a price range that's lower than that. So a lot of people are buying older Harley Davidsons just based off of price. You can pick up an older Evo touring motorcycle for $4,500, $5,000 any day of the week, pretty much anywhere across the country. The Evo engine is very strong. It's a very solid, very reliable engine, but it doesn't have that punch. It doesn't have that power that a lot of people are seeking out of a Harley Davidson. Before I started buying newer bikes, I had a 93 Dyna lowrider. That was an Evolution engine, and it did everything I needed to do, but it really topped out around 100 mile an hour unless you do a lot of engine work to them. They're very reliable. It's a single cam engine, and you can find parts for them anywhere. Aftermarket parts are available anywhere. So if you're looking for something based off of price, I would recommend an older Evo touring motorcycle. But just remember, you're not going to keep up with your buddy on the twin cam 96, the 103, or these new Milwaukee 8 engines. Getting into that, the newer motorcycles went back to a single cam design. So was the twin cam phased out because of reliability issues, because of cost issues? I don't know. That's up to you to decide. I chose the newer model motorcycle specifically because it went back to a single cam, and I loved the simplicity and the ease of maintenance on the Evolution engine. All I had to really do was throw a cam in it and reprogram it with a fuel pack, and that bike ran like a monster. Both of my Evo engines were absolutely amazing bikes and were the most reliable ones that I've ever had. With that being said, My newer M8 is a single cam, and I've never had any issues with it. I do the normal maintenance. I actually do it above the schedule, and the bike runs flawlessly. But for price, you can't beat one of the older motorcycles. I just seen a 99 Dyna for sale. So that's a 88-inch twin cam, and the guy's selling it for $3,500. If you could get into that, it's well worth getting into for an entry-level Harley Davidson. This is a really good sipping whiskey, and with it being 80 proof, you're not really losing too much. The flavor is not overpowering of the whiskey itself. I tend to stay away from flavored liquors just because they overpower the complexity of the whiskey itself. But you can definitely taste the oak casks that these were aged in. You get some of that depth. You get a caramel note in there. I'm also getting kind of a light floral note, almost like a charred charcoal note. And then it's also got that chocolate in there. So this is very pleasing to the palate. I would highly recommend this if you're looking for something just to sip, complex, and have some deep tones in it in the whiskey itself. Number 3, I want to talk about speed and performance. So speed and performance, you're going to really want to stay towards the mid-level older bikes. So when I say that, I'm speaking of like the 96 cubic inch, the 103 cubic inch, because you are going to get the most bang per dollar when it comes to these engines. So the 96 and the 103 you can find on the market, very extremely competitively priced. People are selling the 103s to get the 107s, so you can pick up some really good performance there for not a lot of money. I have seen the 103 Dynas, like the Dyna Lowriders, selling for anywhere between 7 to 10 grand with very low miles in extremely good shape. So if you're on the fence between buying a 107 or a 114 Milwaukee 8 and buying a 103 twin cam, I would highly recommend getting on them and test riding them, because between the 107 and the 103, the power is very negligible. You can actually upgrade the 103 and get a ton of power and a ton of performance out of that motorcycle for a very low amount of money. Especially now with all the build lists being out there and all the years of support and performance going into the 103 twin cam, I would be hard pressed to say that you would be well served by picking up a 103 twin cam over a 107 Milwaukee 8. The newer Milwaukee 8 engines and the 107, I don't feel like they're producing as much top end or horsepower as you can get out of a 103 for putting the same amount of money in it. Now let me explain that. If you're going to purchase a 107 and you're going to purchase like a Street Bob, let's say a 2021, a 2020 Street Bob, you're going to get a lot of power up front, but you're also going to spend $15,000 to $16,000 at a dealership. If you buy an older twin cam 103 for, let's say, $9,000, if you put another $7,000 into that bike, you're going to blow past any 107 on the road. The 103 is a highly, highly, highly reliable engine. There's tons of aftermarket support, and there's hundreds of thousands of them on the road right now. If you're looking to get in the Harley and you want the best bang for your buck and you want the best performance to dollar ratio, go with a 103. Get yourself a tuner, get it dyno tuned, throw a 2-in-1 exhaust on it, and just get out there and have some fun with that bike. As for this Bird Dog chocolate, I would highly recommend that. I would put this on as a mid-level. This is something very tasty. It's something that once you get on the palate, it's going to be something you're going to want to share with some friends, maybe over a campfire. It's not the whiskey that you're going to want to sit next to a candle and read a book. This is the whiskey that you're going to want to open next to the tailgate of your buddy's Ford F-150 on a late night after hunting season next to a bonfire. I would give this a 6 out of 10. In terms of complexity, in terms of whiskey taste, in terms of price, I would give it a 10 out of 10. This is something really good that you wouldn't feel bad cracking open and sharing with 5, 6 of your friends. So the fourth thing I wanted to talk about when it comes to new versus old motorcycles is the amount of mechanical knowledge you're going to need. Mechanical skill. Number 4, we're focusing on mechanical skill. If you get into a shovel head, a pan head, a knucklehead, you're going to have to be a pretty skilled mechanic, or you're at least going to have to know where to go to get the knowledge and information needed to work on those motorcycles. If you're working on an Evo or a twin cam, the information is widespread. It's out there everywhere, and you could do pretty much all of it with very basic tools. I think the only specialty tool that I needed when I was working on the Evo was a rocker box wrench, so that I could actually get in between the top part of the frame and the rocker box cover, and they make a shortened one, but I was even able to get around that. I took an Allen wrench and I grinded it off so that it was very short and I could get it right in there, and I never had an issue. When it comes to the newer motorcycles, you're going to have some kind of mechanical skill. You're also going to have to invest a lot of money into tools that are specifically designed for the Milwaukee 8 engine. Yes, there's specific tools used for pulling the cam bearing on the twin cam. Can you get away with using something else? You can, but I highly recommend investing in Jim's performance tools. I also highly recommend, if you're going to get into the M8 motorcycle platform, you buy the specialty tools and you buy the literature that comes along with it. Get a good shop manual. You're going to need it. If you have a level of mechanical experience which is limited to maybe just changing oil on a motorcycle, get an Evo, get a twin cam. If you really want to push it a little bit, go ahead and get the M8. But there's going to be a lot more information and a lot more specialty tools involved with the newer motorcycles. Number 5, let's talk about parts availability. So we already covered reliability, we covered price, we covered a couple other issues. Let's really get into parts availability. So with the older motorcycles, there's going to be a lot of parts availability for the Evos, for the twin cams. There's also a ton of parts availability for the new M8s. But let's talk about older. Let's talk about shovels, pans. Let's talk about knuckles. If you're going to really get an older bike, that's an investment. That is for somebody who is skilled with working on motorcycles, somebody who has a lot of years in the game. If I were you, I would steer away from anything shovel and back. Unless you have a wealth of knowledge and you have a lot of people around you that have those engines or have had experience working on those engines. Let's face it, Harley Davidson dealerships right now, a lot of them refuse to work on anything more than 10 years old. That's talking a lot of your twin cams. So really do your homework and your research and understand, if you're going to buy a knuckle or a shovel, first of all, you're going to have a ton of money. Second of all, you're going to need a ton of specialty parts. A lot of those wrenches that you need for working on those engines, you have to buy from somebody who is manufacturing them based off the old specs. You ain't going to walk into a Harley Davidson dealership and buy a spanner wrench for a pan head. It's not going to work. So with that being said, I really think there's a lot of pros and cons into buying a new versus an old motorcycle. If you're just getting into Harley Davidson, I recommend that you buy something in that twin cam lineage. So anything from a 1999 up until like a 2015, I think you're going to be served very well. If you want pricing very low, you're going to want to go with an 88 cubic inch because you can find those a dime a dozen for relatively cheap prices. If you want something more performance, go ahead and lean forward towards the 2007 and up, because you're going to find that you're not going to have to mess with the cam chain tensioners. They went to a hydraulic one. You're also going to get more bang for your buck in performance because the 96 and the 103 engines are absolute monsters. They run phenomenal. And you got to think, in 1999, they came out with the twin cam. In 2015, they were still producing it, but in a 103 engine with upgraded cam chain tensioners, with more performance and more horsepower. You were getting a refined version. If you ask me, between new and old, your best bang for your buck is right in the middle. That 2013, 14, 15 Dyna platform. You're going to get the best performance and you're going to get the best bang for your buck.